Hi everyone, I'm Maddie Silverson with Tech Channel, and I'd like to welcome you to our presentation, The Top HADR Trends of 2025. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but feel free to ask a question or submit a comment at any time during the event by entering it into the Q&A panel. You can download a PDF version of today's slide deck by clicking on the drop-down menu labeled Event Resources on the left side of the screen. Click on the drop-down menu and select Slide Deck. You can download those right from the platform without being disconnected from the webinar. Today's webinar is sponsored by Fortra. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Huntington, EVP, Technical Solutions at Fortra, to kick things off. Tom, take it away.
Well, thank you, Maddie. It's wonderful to be here today. Thank you to Tech Channel for having us. On behalf of Fortra, we do appreciate the partnership there. It's been a long time running relationship with your group. I'm Tom Huntington, our EVP of Technical Solutions at Fortra. I'm also an IBM champion in the Power Group. I've been that for over 10 years now, so a full decade of that. And I'm also the author of the IBM Marketplace Survey, and I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. Longtime member of Help Systems Fortra. Yes, we had a name change only 3 years ago, but well, time flies. So excited to be with you today. We have a great agenda. We have about 45 minutes of content that we'll present today. We'll first of all talk about today's market results. We'll talk about the importance of HADR. And then we'll get into why don't customers test? And looking at cloud and how that can help your strategy when it comes to HADR. Is there a simpler approach? And then transitioning from other solutions, we'll talk about some of the things that Fortra does. We'll wrap things up. We'll have a Q&A today. There will be a copy of my handouts for you available at, later on, and the event is being recorded. So I think we got all bases covered. If you haven't heard about the Fortra Marketplace Survey around IBM, we've been doing this for over, well, let's see, this is year 13. The survey is open again. I have a QR code on the next slide. But every year we ask the same question. And that is, what are your top IT concerns in the market? And the reason we ask that question is we want to know what's on your mind. And cybersecurity has been number one. IBM skills this last year was number two. Then modernization, and then HADR. Those four top concerns have been in the top four concerns in switching orders. Now, cybersecurity has been top one for the last 9 years, so no surprise there. Cybersecurity is on everybody's mind, but HADR kind of surprises me in a way because it's like, doesn't everybody have a solution in place? Doesn't everybody have something that they're relying on in case their business would happen to fail on? And what it tells me is people are evaluating their HADR. And so it's good to be here today. It's good to look at options. It's always something that we have to be thinking about. And by the way, the Marketplace Survey, I have the QR code up in front of you right now. Take a picture of it. Take the survey. It is your way of giving back to the community. Over the years, we've always heard IBM doesn't market the platform enough, right? Well, this is your way of helping on input around IBM, the Power servers. So thank you for taking the survey. If you haven't done it yet, it'll be open until, I believe now we're going to have it open until the end of the first full week of November. Anyways, so moving ahead, let's stay current in data centers. So that slide is another question that we have. And the reason we ask that is to find out, as IBM customers or IBM Power customers running IBM, are you staying current in the operating system? We'll see 7.5, 7.4, 7.3, 7.2, and 7.1 operating systems. No 7.6 because this survey results was from last fall and 7.6 didn't exist. So it'll be interesting to see this year and in that webinar that we'll conduct in January where your thoughts are on operating systems level. But anyways, it looks, the IBM community stays pretty current. And that is good because then you have even better options when it comes to HADR. Now, we want to ask you a polling question here, so I'm going to open up a little survey, and we're going to see, I'm going to send that off to the audience, and we want to know what technologies you are using today when it comes to backup recovery, HADR. and you can select more than one. So you might be using tape backups, which is fine. They seem old in a lot of cases for people, but the technology's been around for a while. Maddie, Melissa, I'm going to ask the question. I'm not sure the survey doesn't look like they're entering results into the survey. So did I do something wrong here?
It looks good, and it just might be 1 minute.
Okay, sounds good. Then the results will come in. Okay, sounds good. Oh, yes, look at that. There we go. So anyways, tape backups, virtual tape libraries, flash copy, journal-based replication, storage-based replication, storage-based replication with PowerHA, and maybe you're not sure. You're not sure what your company's doing, and that's maybe the main reason you're here today. So virtual tape libraries, look at that, higher than tape backups. Obviously, virtual tape libraries have been around for quite a while on the IBM platform. Flash copies, a lot of us are doing SAN, using the IBM SAN storage and doing flash with it. Journal-based replication is still very popular out there, and storage-based and replication with FSR, and we have a few PowerHA customers too. So answer the survey. I don't know if my timing is not necessarily, I'm not bragging about it, but with the AWS outage on Monday, recognizing that things do go wrong, what do you do, right? What's the backup solution? I think in case of some of these big cloud providers like that, as a customer, you just don't have any option. What do you do? With IBMI, the nice thing about it is most of us control our own destiny when it comes to HA and DR, because it's on-premise, or even if it's in a private cloud, we still should be considering what we're doing for backup and recovery. So just another example of what can happen in our world when it comes to disasters. So I'm going to send the results out here so you all can see. Looks like almost, well, not quite an even split on tape backup and virtual tape backups, but people are still doing tape. What's the good thing about tape backups? I say it's ransomware protection because it's disconnected from your network and the bad actors can't get to it and encrypt it on you. So it's always, in a way, kind of a neat solution today in today's world of cybersecurity issues. A lot of people doing flash copy, journal-based replication, storage-based replication, just a lot of options out there. And it's really good to see the variety of what everybody's doing. Okay, so moving away from the polling question, let's keep this going here. So another set of slides that we get from the, or results we get from the marketplace survey is just asking similar questions to what are you using for high availability. And, even in this is people are applying on HA, and we use HADR interchangeable in a lot of cases. Recovering from tape, 54%. Using a virtual tape library is 41%. Again, they could select more than one option. And then we can see over to the right that software replication is still more popular than the hardware replication, at least in this set of customers that took the survey last year. And we had about 280 people take the survey last year. Now, the other thing we ask in the survey is about IBMI and the cloud. And the reason I have that in here is that people are turning towards HA cloud-based technologies. So in other words, you might have an on-premise server and you're replicating to a virtual partition in somebody's cloud. Could be a private cloud, could be IBM DS, it could be Kyndryl, it could be LightEdge. We could go on and on naming all the different vendors out there. But the fact of the matter is, IBMI in the cloud, a lot of the first steps is HA, DR, really, disaster recovery. Okay, let's move ahead here. And isn't HA and DR more important today? I asked that question. I almost think it is. It really is. It should be something that really is top of mind, top of concern, and we need to feel good about what we have in place, because there's a lot of factors out there that can bite us and cause downtime. Of course, natural disasters, are they worse today? Do we have more problems, or is it just more hyped up by the national media around the world? I don't know. I think obviously there has been, in my mind, climate warming and greater impact of weather and the hurricanes and fires and all those things that we see certainly seem to be worse than they ever have been. Business disruption is certainly another issue. Is just acquisitions, mergers, other things that happen that impact us. Human factors. People still make mistakes, right? Incomplete backups. Oh my gosh, I hope that's not you. But people go to use their backups, try to restore from ransomware. And a lot of our what do you want to call it, fellow adjacent systems, and their backups aren't good. They've never tested them. Cybersecurity factors, right? We just talked about ransomware. Political uprisings and some issues there. I mean, just that's a worldwide issue. You think it's not? There are possibilities in anywhere in North America, anywhere in Europe, that a political uprising may cause you to not be able to get to your data center, might cause you not be able to get into your office, wherever you're working from. And of course, there are also the factors of just HA and DR in general. But ITIC does a study it seems like every other year nowadays. So this is from 2024. And reasons for downtime, security was number one, 84% on that. Human error, 69%. Software bugs, flaws, 65%. Remote workers, you can read the rest and go down the list. But nonetheless, there's a variety of things that can cause us downtime. Even though it seems like technology is more solid these days than it ever has been, there's still a variety of reasons that can cause downtime. And then the big question comes down to, what does an hour of downtime cost you, right? I mean, depending upon the size of your company, 97% of the large enterprises with more than 1,000 employees say that on average, a single hour downtime costs them $100,000. So with 1,000 employees running on IBMI, which is not unusual, that's $100,000 on average downtime. And again, depending upon where your company, I'm not going to go through all these different numbers, but where your company fits in, you'll see the average cost of an hour of downtime on this chart. Now, the good news is the IBM Power Server is a system with 99.999% uptime, which is on average about 5 minutes a year, right? Obviously, we can brag to our fellow end users that are, or IT professionals that are on other platforms, and we know that their downtime is not the same as what we experience on the IBM Power Server. I say knock on wood, but 5.25 minutes per year is not a lot of downtime, but nonetheless, that's an average. So if it impacts you, that's all that matters, right? So got to make sure that we're ready to go. All right, so let's move on. To talk about business risk, right? What happens when we lose our systems? We lose, of course, productivity. We might lose data. There might be data in transition. There might be damaged data. There might be, in case of cybersecurity, stolen data that we have to worry about. The other one we have to worry about is the reputation of the business. What did the impact of CrowdStrike do on the world of computing and to their reputation around cybersecurity? There's also the potential of litigations. Your customers, your vendors, the suppliers, the ones who depend on you are going to be potentially suing you. Regulation compliance exposures. Certainly, governments around the globe do hand out fines to businesses for different reasons. Potential for civil, criminal liabilities, those not to mention all the different things that we see around the globe in that regards. And potential for unsustainable losses when you get results in company going out of business. I mean, somebody who has ransomware and can't recover from it can potentially go out of business. And, we often hear it, well, IBMI can't get ransomware. Well, that's not true. IBMI can have ransomware, and IBMI can have malware, and malware that we find out in the IFS can actually execute on IBMI. So the risks are there. We need to make sure that we can recover. So then, even in today's world, we have why customers don't test, right? Why don't we test our role swaps? It I've been in this space for really kind of a little over 15 years now, talking role swaps and high availability with customers. And one of the persons that's well known in the industry that does a lot with BRMS is Debbie Saugin. And basically, she says if you've never tested your backup, you don't have a backup. The same logic applies for HA. Larry Bolhuis, will throw his name out there too. He says the same thing. So you want business continuity. You have to be able to be able to have a predictable and confident process that you can do a role swap or use whatever your backup means are, right? If you're just backing up the tape, and I run into customers that are just backing up the tape or just a VTL, and that's it. They don't have a replication storage based or software based. And but again, have you tested it? You can't afford to be the next business in the news, as we talked about earlier. The good news is with IBMI, we know that you can restore your systems. We know you can get your system back up and running. And another reason that you might need to do role swaps is you're required by a regulation. You might be in the banking industry that requires it. Okay, so why should we test our HA? Again, if disaster strikes, we want to be able to continue the business. You've invested a lot in hardware, communications, new software, all these things that are supposed to help you out, but you never get to the end game, and that is knowing whether or not you can actually use it. And of course, people who spent the money on it, they expect it to work. If there's a disaster, when it occurs, they want you to be able to recover. And of course, the success of that, if you're the person responsible, might be impactful on your career. So I think, there's three reasons why people are scared to role swap. One, their data is not current. They're worried the data is behind. It's just nobody set up the rules correctly. When we talk software replication, hardware replication, they just have never gotten confident in it. And the other thing is people don't trust the setup. Somebody else set it up. They lost the experience. They don't have the skills. Person retired that used to be responsible for HADR, and they never spent time educating a new staff member. And so those three reasons are the main reasons to me why people are scared to do role swaps. So what about your data not being current? Is there a problem with transfer lag time, apply lag time, meaning the data's not getting there in time or the data's not being applied in time? Is it time for a hardware upgrade? Is it time for a network upgrade? Is it time to just simply break down all the pieces and what's causing the lag and figure it out? So how do you know if you have your data over there? Do you have something that you can do in your business application on the target side that allows you to see the data's current, the transactions are there? Network outages, I'd say the networks are more reliable, but boy, when a network goes out today, it's more impactful, right? And then, of course, will your software just pick up? Will your recovery plan just pick up after you've had an outage? What happens to that data that's in transition? It's a nice thing about journaling. Journaling's been on IBMI since the beginning, since it was AS400, and actually way back to System 38. And it's one of the things that really, when you have a large database, you should be doing, because even if you have just like a IPL, a hard crash of the operating system, or you reboot it, the operating system uses that journal information to help rebuild data that was in transition. Whether or not you actually use any kind of apply on the other side or any of those kinds of things that rebuilds the data. So the reason we don't trust the setup, of course, is the person who implemented the software is no longer with the company. The product that was implemented was too complicated, or the process that was used was too complicated. We just don't understand the setup, and so we've never gotten educated. And sometimes people are just scared, right? I mean, because this is an impactful area. If you make a mistake, you can impact business. So you have to know the rules that were put in the product, and then the other thing is you got to understand your environment. That's another thing that amazes me is people don't understand all the libraries that they have on their system, all the IFS directories they have on their system, what's changing, what should be backed up, what should be replicated. There's just a lot of baggage on the system because nobody purges things. There's stuff that's old out there, duplicate test libraries, things that maybe should have been just removed from the system. After all, you're on a production partition, for example, or that's what we're concerned about, right? You shouldn't be having test libraries just sitting out there for years and years and taking up space and actually being replicated. No experience. You've never done a role swap before. Oh, we had a consultant who set it up and they've retired or they've moved on to a different business. The person who, or the company or what the technology we're using is no longer in business. Our management team won't authorize us to do a role swap. Another issue, right? Executives don't believe that you need to do that. You paid all that money on the technology. Doesn't it just work, right? No, we need to test things out. So some tips for successful role swap is, really create a step-by-step plan. I go way back to the system of 38 days. I hate to even admit that, but I had a checklist I built based on time of day. If I had a failure, what would be different about my recovery if it was 8 a.m. in the morning versus 4 p.m. in the afternoon? And I would just role play through that disaster and how I'd recover from it through the checklist and vet it out that way until I actually ran a test. So you do need to periodically verify that your software and hardware is working, whether you're using software replication or hardware replication. It is foolish of you to just assume, right? Develop automation scripts that help with your business application. Nobody knows your business application like you do. Develop shutdown and startup programs. We often run into people that are using HA, DR, replication, software, hardware, whatever, and they're running the same things over on the target system where they're replicating data to. And it's like, no wonder you're having problems with locks and other problems. Verify the health of your business data. Is my data current? You should have some scripts. In today's world, you can write some SQL to quickly deliver results out of your database. Maybe somebody else that you've met in the past has the same application you have, right? You're at Common, you're at IBM Tech Exchange, you're at a local user group on IBMI. Find out who else has N4 or JD Edwards or some trucking application that you run, right? Remember that, again, with role swaps, this is just a test, right? Expect some problems initially, and your first role swap will probably be a little less successful than your second, your third. But we have companies on IBMI that role swap every quarter. So you can do it. And so you got to budget that into your IT plan is a role swap. Some other things to do if you don't have the expertise and you don't see yourself getting it, hire an expert from outside. They should be able to help you review your setup, help you get through the role swap. And quite honestly, you want this to be successful, so you might only get one chance. Many independent consultants who represent all these different technologies, there are experts out there that have worked with all the various applications and hardware out there. You just got to go out and find those people and bring them to your company so that you have the expertise. This is just too critical of an area to ignore. And if you need even more assistance, many of the managed service providers will help you out. They will, for a fee, of course, host your virtual partition. They'll help you with your site tests, and they'll monitor your HADR for you. All right. So moving along to that topic area is upping your strategy with cloud. And again, to us in the IBMI world, cloud is really, in most cases, just another partition, right? It's not on premise. It's in a private cloud or it's being managed by a public cloud provider. But again, they're going to have some private cloud helping them out. So, you can't move to AWS with IBMI. You can't move to Google Cloud to IBM without IBMI servers or processors being up in their cloud, and they're probably going to be managed by a business partner, right? So Part of the challenge here is how do I move my on-premise data to the cloud without having downtime, time for testing the new environment. I want to make sure that that's all good. What is the process for switching over? If I'm in the cloud, is it different than when I have my own 2 data centers? How to keep your data secure. You still need to worry about security. The cloud providers will only go so far. How to keep that data between source and target current and up to date. And of course, there's different hardware features, and there's, again, you might be the one with the experience depending upon the various cloud providers that you might pick. Some of them are good at what they do, and some are not as good as they sound on paper. So, a lot of people will do side-by-side migrations. So they'll have the 2 servers in the same data center and do side-by-side because the network is faster, easier to test, faster to modify rules. It's more secure while they're doing that. And then what they'll do is they'll use software replication, logical-based replication, whatever you want to call it, journal-based replication, and they will ship the physical server somewhere else, and then they'll replicate that way. Otherwise, there are things like data boxes where you can move the data that way, or simply move it if you're not a huge customer, meaning you're a couple terabytes in size, you could just move your data across the network and start that way. And honestly, sometimes that's the easiest way, especially with software replication. It's a lot easier. So you'll see DR as a service. We at Fortra also have our Robot HA at various MSPs that are doing HA as a service. Basically, what we're doing is helping you out. You don't have a secondary data center, right? So you need a secondary data center. This is the way of achieving that. A secondary system. This is the way of doing that. And speaking of secondary systems, I run into a lot of customers that still don't know what a CBU is, a capacity backup unit. So if you are keeping everything on premise, and that's fine, it's a great solution. If you have the staff to do it and the data centers to do it, you can buy a CBU box, a capacity backup unit, as your target box versus renting a partition or having a full system as your target box. And a lot of customers don't know about that. It's amazing to me. Their hardware reseller doesn't tell them about it. So basically, with DR as a service, you're basically picking an MSP cloud provider. Many of them will have their own solutions already that they're suggesting to you. If you want, we'll certainly work with them from a Fortra perspective and help you out with getting Robot HA in there. We've had very good success with that. We'll help you verify that the data is correct. We'll get you to what we call a roast wall active, and basically help you perform automated monitoring so that there are any issues, you know about them before you have to use it. And then, of course, help you too with an annual roll swap. Certainly something we want to help you out with. And then, MSPs out there, and you can read the list here, and I apologize. I'm sure I got many other MSPs with me, and their names keep changing because of the world of mergers and acquisitions to keep up with all the different names. But there are a lot of options out here, and I, again, apologize because we have many partners that are MSPs, and they're all good people, and they're all people with a lot of experience around the IBMI platform. It's just a matter of you lining up with which one makes sense for you. It might be there are MSPs out there that all they do is JD Edwards. There are MSPs out there or ASPs that just do banking, financials. Look at Fiserv, Jack Henry, FIS Global. They have customers that have their solutions on premise. They have customers that have their solutions in the cloud. They have some customers that are using, DR as a service, basically. They have an on-premise core banking application, and they're replicating it to Jack Henry's cloud or Fiserv's cloud. So that's certainly all options that have been out in the IBMI world for many years now. So you just got to do it. So side-by-side rep migrations are certainly nice if you can do that. That kind of goes with the idea that you're going to move your hardware from your data center physically to another data center where it's going to be hosted in a co-location. Or people are going to do backups locally, send the backups via a virtual tape data bots to the target and restore from there. Meanwhile, while that's going on, you're going to be using things like software replication to get you there. You can copy the source to target just simply via FTP. Again, depending upon the size of your environments. Obviously, if you're a large user group customer, your situation is going to be different than somebody who has 1 or 2 terabytes of storage, and that's their main production. And I probably could argue if I got on any one of your systems, there's probably 25%, or let's say maybe I'm being too big on that number, but say 10%, 20% waste of things that shouldn't be replicated or sent to the cloud. So as you go through this, you're going to start your journaling, apply your changes, and that software is going to be doing all that for you. Verify the data is current, and of course, we want to test to make sure that we can use the data when we get over there, and making sure that we have application scripts in place that will verify data that meets your needs, your data needs. I mean, I've always said you can't go to IBM to get your data back, right? So you, as a custodian of that data, have to have tools in place to help you understand what's in your data. So migrations can be to the cloud or on-premise. Customers are doing both, as we saw who's using the cloud earlier from the marketplace survey. Customers are still doing on-premise, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, i.e. AWS, right? Need I say any more? We just had all that outage on Monday of this week, and those things impact businesses, right? Obviously. And if you're all on-premise, look, you're dealing with your own data centers. You certainly could have network outages. You certainly could have natural disasters. Those things don't go away, but in a certain sense, you kind of control your own destiny. And the thing is, with HADR, with IBM I, a lot of your leaders may not understand this, but you have to have an IBM I server on the other end. Again, you can't replicate to AWS to an AWS server and expect IBM I to run it. It has to have an IBM Power server with an IBM I partition, and that's number one. So then, we talked about migrations. You can do side by side. This is just a kind of a picture to walk through some things that are available. Typically, what you would be doing with software replication, you're loading that software on premise, and you're loading it on wherever your target is, whether it's cloud, another data center, a side by side. And then that's basically building out save files from your data, sending them over to the target, restoring them. But the nice thing about this is that we're using journaling in here too, and we're recording the local journal transactions and marrying the operating system marries those to the remote journal on a target system. So your data is being recorded until you get a chance to actually restore it. And again, with software replication, it just gets restored, journaling's going, and the next thing you know, the data is all caught up and it's in the cloud partition along with on-premise. And then eventually some customers are getting rid of their data center completely, right? We see a lot of that too. So then they might actually roll swap and be cloud to cloud replication. Or they might just switch completely and stop using software replication and just do storage-based replication once they get into the private cloud provider's infrastructure. Because they might be using IBM SAN storage, and they might be using, as we saw a slide earlier, FSR, or they might be using Power HA. Those things are all available. But, simpler approach in my mind, we've been in this business now for a little over a decade. Robot HA is a simpler solution. Maybe doesn't have all the bells and whistles of some of the other applications out there, but it gets the job done, and it's a lot easier for your staff to understand and get going with it. We simply say, here's a library, create the journal locally, create the remote journal all the objects that can be journaled, like physical files, data keys, data areas, and IFS. Journal those, send that library over there, get the transactions up to date. And again, it's library by library. So obviously, if you have 200 libraries that you need to replicate, you have 200 rules. But believe me, it's a lot easier for the next person who comes along and say, oh, library TomLib, it's down here, or ERP lib or prod lib is right here, and here's the journal, and here's the target journal. It's just a lot easier for your team to understand. And then the other aspect of it is replicating your application objects like programs and job descriptions and other items that can't be journaled. Those are picked up through save file changes and put over there along with user-defined profile rules, spool files, web definitions, TCP/IP configurations. If you really want to be successful, you also have to have your system type objects replicated or values, system values, whatever you want to call them. Those also have to be replicated to the target. And so these are IFS and library rules. That's what we do in the software-based logical replication that we do. And of course, to us, there are benefits of logical replication for migration. Certainly, it allows you to have, if you're dealing with a lot of data, you have that local journal being available on the local system, keeping all the transactions while you get your data, that starting point up in the cloud. If you're using a backup solution, you have to somehow get that media into the cloud, restore it. And with local journals, that data's in sync then because it's being provided through journaling from the source side to the target side. The other thing too is with this type of software, you can certainly be at different OS levels. You can do side by side, or you can have great distances. It doesn't really matter. Both systems are active. There's benefits of that. You certainly can do your backups over on your target system. And then when you're ready and you're happy with your data that's in the cloud, then you can row swap and start running production from the cloud side after the migration. Now, some other things we talk about quite a bit these days is helping customers out with transitions from other solutions. There are solutions out there that people have been using for years. This HADR is 3.5, 4 decades old. When you think about System 38, AS400, iSeries, now IBM I. And there are solutions out there that either you can't get support from them, or they're too costly, or whatever it may be. You might have to transition. And you're transitioning for a couple of reasons. One of them, or several reasons, I should say. One of them is you've never roll swapped to the current solution because you never felt comfortable with it. You've had problems. You're always babysitting it. Maybe you only have a DR version. Some people buy different versions of replication software and hardware, and they can't ever test it because they've never gotten the license keys or whatever it may be. Your current tool, you just don't feel comfortable because your daily care and feeding that you've been doing. You have performance issues. Your production server and the workload on it can't be handled over on your development environment. The cost of your current tool. So cost is certainly an issue. It's forcing people out of certain solutions. Support is an issue along the way. We've never, gotten to the level of automation that we always wanted. It was too complicated. We just never got there. Or in some cases, customers, all you really have is a backup solution today. You don't have a full-time, real-time replication solution. And, either hardware or software are being used by customers. It's just a matter of picking what's the right approach for you. So the best approach for you is it really comes down to evaluating your current setup. So unfortunately, you have an environment. You have to understand it. You have to gain back the knowledge that maybe you've lost over the years about what's important. That's the other thing, not to throw another tool at you, but we have a great tool called Robot Space. I love it I can install it on any system in the world, run a few reports, and then start looking at what data is changing. The data that's changing is what matters most to me. That's the data that needs to be journaled. That's the data that needs to be replicated. That's what I want to target and build my rules around. So create the rules based on the data that's changing. You're going to have some downtime when you switch from one solution to another. But basically, we call it a journal takeover. We can do a journal takeover and go from the old solution to the new solution, and it might just be a couple hours of downtime. Now, downtime's not allowed. It's a whole different issue. We're going to have to really plan for that, but plan on the data, taking longer to get over there, and maybe just setting up from scratch and just saving it with the product and not having any downtime because of that. But most cases, we're inheriting rules from other solutions that are out there, and so we have to evaluate. We have to look at that before we just move along. Now, performance impact is certainly something to think about. I don't hear a lot about this as much as I maybe did in the past, but there are tools out there too that are taking a lot of resources on the production system just to audit and look at, do I have all the objects that I need to have? And people are running still audits every single day, every hour in some cases. It's just practices from yesteryear that seem like a waste of time, waste of resources. And then care and feeding. Products are complicated to monitor in a lot of cases. Products don't warn people when there's problems. It's late, and so then when it comes time to actually use it, there's problems there too. So for us, the transition works. Generally, we work customers through what we call a proof of concept. Install the product. We can install it side by side. Support team will help you. Our services team will help you. We just don't replicate everything initially. And then when it comes to transition time, we take a look at your current rules, and we set those rules up ahead of time, and then we pick a time we're actually going to switch over to Robot HA and move all the rest, and a lot of times improve the rules and what's being replicated. And then also, let's not leave you high and dry. We want to make sure that you can have monitoring in place, because if there is a problem, the network goes out. You never know. A user profile gets disabled. Somebody installs something else that stops the replication. All those things are possible. So, the benefits of the transition approach is that we're going to ease you into it. We're going to look at your existing rules. We're going to avoid that big bang approach. I mean, really, nobody wants a big bang and all of a sudden nothing's working. We want to educate your team along the way. We want to provide side-by-side comparisons so that you're comfortable with tools. And then ultimately, whether it's hardware or software replication, we want you to be at our full roll swap. If you own this technology today and you're not using it and nobody's doing a roll swap, at least annually, then do you have a solution? And we want to make sure you're doing roll swaps. When we got into this business, I think, precisely at the time, they had a report that talked about only 10% of their customers were 100% confident that they could do a roll swap. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy to think that this technology has been around for 4 decades and people are still not comfortable with it. It's kind of scary. Now, one of the other things that most of the products in the market have is what we call test while active, where production can stay up and running, and then you can go test out your backup system. You can do that with many different things, even hardware replication, where you can go spin up a copy of the flash copy, for example, and use that for testing, make sure that you could run your business over there. So there's a lot of different things like flash copy, Robot HA, other products that are out there from a software application that do allow you to test while production is up and running. It's not a full roll swap because of other things that we'll talk about here shortly. So again, just some benefits of what I see with logical replication. Source and target are both active. Often we can do BI over on the target if we want, or we can use this type of technology to create another partition that is BI. Performing backups on target systems versus having downtime. I run into customers that have downtime on their production system because of backups, and I'm like, why aren't you got a replication software package, why aren't you doing your backups over on your target system? Maybe you want to have multiple targets, you certainly can do that. We have customers that use a combination of Power HA with Robot HA. We have customers that use FSR, full system replication, with logical replication, and there's reasons for that. But nonetheless, all these things you need to test, and you need to be able to make sure that you have the proper monitoring in place, whether it's through your MSP or through tools that you're using yourself. And really, one of the things that we're finding as a new offering from Fortra, we have started a new program called Robot HA Care. The idea behind it is that we have the experts. We'll provide in-depth role swap training and preparation. Many of our customers are already, we're helping them out with annual role swaps. But we're going a step further. We're going to be reviewing Robot HA on a monthly basis for you. We're going to personalize the recommendations, and we're going to do remediation service around this and help you out and make sure that you're ready when it's time for an actual disaster that might happen, an unexpected disaster, and you need to use the technology. We want to make sure that you're happy with it. But that's something you can talk to the team here over at Fortra, and we'll help you out with that. So the other thing I thought would be good is just to kind of give you a little checklist that you need to do from a high-level perspective. First of all, you need to understand your recovery time objective and your recovery point objectives. What are they? How soon do I need the business up? And if I have a disaster, will I lose any data? That's really what you're answering with RTO and RPO. And then what does an hour of downtime really cost your business? What would it cost you if IBMI is gone? We underestimate the value of the server because it's always up and running, right? Seems kind of ironic to be promoting HADR software or solutions and then turn around and say, well, IBMI is up, right? But when it's down, it's not good, right? So we have to plan for that. So have you budgeted time and dollars for doing a role swap? Have you verified the systems that depend on IBMI will work after a disaster? The point we often forget, there are Windows applications, Linux applications, Unix applications that depend on the data on IBMI. Will those work? Have you prepared for testing them when you actually do a role swap? Have you tested or audited your backups lately? That's something you should be doing periodically. Does your staff need training in this area? Do your executives understand how important IBMI is a business? I think if you attack this checklist here and have answers to every one of these questions, you'll feel a lot better about where you sit. Or you'll feel like you don't sit really well and now I need to address these things. So anyways, it's been great chatting with you today about HADR in 2025 and things that are out there for you. IBMI is more important than ever. Those of us who are on IBMI, there's a reason you're on IBMI. It's your core application. It's a reliable system. It's a scalable system, but we still need to have HADR. A role swap is a test. Make sure you do them. Don't be surprised if you find problems because, again, it's a test. We want to find those problems so that when it comes time to actually use it, it's going to work. Migrating HADR to the cloud is a good approach. You can do it. People are doing it. There's a lot of different things out there. IBM even has a tool now called IBMI Migration. There's a simpler solution. We think it's Robot HA, much easier for people to get started and moving with. And we have helped people transition from other solutions if you're willing to spend some time with us. So just to remind you before we get into Q&A, we have a lot of solutions on IBMI from Fortra. Cybersecurity is a big one of them. But we help people out with document management, business intelligence, capacity planning. And at Fortra in general, we do have a large portfolio of cybersecurity solutions. So if your team is looking at cybersecurity outside of IBMI, give Fortra a look. We have a very comprehensive set of security tools for email, data security, file transfer, user account management, vulnerability scanning, pen testing, XDR, MDR. If you don't know what that is, I help you out with that. And then, of course, we help you out with automation and all those things in IBMI. So we want to have a little Q&A now. So if I could bring up my Q&A panel, let's see what we've had for questions along the way. And I'm also going to bring back the survey slides so that if you didn't get a chance to take a picture of this earlier, you can do that. But our first question is, does BRMS, Backup and Recovery and Media Services, work with Flash Copy? And the answer is yes, they do. There is the Flash Copy Toolkit, often from Expert Labs, that works with BRMS, but also the BRMS team here at Fortra that work on Backup Recovery and Media Services have done a lot over the years to integrate BRMS with flash copy and help with tracking and working with that. And it should be in the wiki that we have online, the documentation, probably a better word for it. Power HA, often get confused on Power HA versus FSR is the next question from Bob. And does Power HA require an IASP? Yes, it does. It's an independent auxiliary storage pool. Are they hard to use? Is the next question. And really, they're not. IASP technology has been available on the IBM operating system for really 2 decades now. And really, it's a save and a restore when it comes to your libraries to get them in there. And then setting up your users to use IAS technology. My colleague Brian Nordland does labs and education around that technology. So it's quite a very successful. Power HA has definitely been around for a while. So what is the benefit of journal-based replication versus hardware replication? Both work. First of all, we've been doing journal-based replication for 4 decades on the IBM AS400 System 38 platform. Hardware replication is a little newer, requires primarily SAN storage from IBM. You have the choice of Power HA or FSR. The difference is with Power HA, both servers are active. You're using an independent auxiliary storage pool, and everything you put in there gets replicated. The downside of hardware-based replication is it takes more bandwidth, and you do have to have the SAN storage. Journal-based replication, journaling, even with hardware replication, you still are recommended to do journaling of your database locally because of hard crashes it's used. So, and then, software-based replication just offers more flexibility. Certainly, there's more rules with it. There might take more care and feeding in that regards. Either solution, you're still going to need to monitor, and in either solution, you still need to do your roll swap testing. So they both work. It just kind of depends upon cost and your understanding of software versus hardware. Do customers really test their roll swap every year? Seems like a funny question, but I suppose it's coming from a company that has not afforded to do that or has never thought about doing that for whatever reason. But yes, customers do. They do have budgets for testing, and they are certainly successful in doing their roll swaps, and they do find problems too. So it's a test. A roll swap is a test, right? And you might find some problems. They might not be huge problems, but every time you do a roll swap, you might find a little something that you either got to update some documentation or change a script. So definitely recommend you doing roll swaps every year, and people do that. And then a question that we have in here related to where did Robot HA come from? Did you acquire it? And the answer is yes, we did. It was acquired now 11 years ago, so it doesn't really quite look the same as it did 11 years ago. And it was a company called Bug Busters. You might not even remember that, but that's where that product came from. But from there to now is over a decade already. And if you don't know, Fortra also technically owns Power HA, which is sold by the IBM channel from a hardware-based replication. So we also work on that technology. So the benefit is we have experience in both of those solutions. So appreciate the question on that last one. And I think, Maddie, at this point in time, we've gone through all the questions that we had out there. I want to thank everybody for joining us on yet another Fortra webinar, and also thank the Tech Channel team for helping to moderate and do this webinar today. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tom. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Our thanks as well to Tom for sharing his insights and expertise with us. Later this week, watch for a follow-up email. It will include a link to the recording of today's webinar, so you can watch it again or forward it to your colleagues and leadership to view on demand. Get the latest on all things tech by going to techchannel.com/subscribe. This concludes our webinar. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.